各位委員，大家
Good afternoon, members. We'll form a quorum for the panel on education. Today we have 3 items on the agenda. Please refer to Annex 2, Appendix 2. We have received 4 information papers since the last meeting, including the information entitled Extension of Hong Kong Scholarship for Excellence Scheme provided by the Education Bureau, and letter dated the 25th of April 2017 from Hon SHIU Ka-chun concerning the registration requirement for institutions offering educational courses to the public. And thirdly, Administration's written response dated 25th of May 2017 to the letter dated 25th of April 2017 from Hon SHIU Ka-chun concerning the registration requirement for institutions offering educational courses to the public. And the fourth one is two letters dated the 9th of June 2017 from Honorable Yip Kin-yun and Honorable Chu Hoi-dik respectively on issues relating to the primary one admission scheme, and a response from the administration has also been received today. Items for discussion at the next meeting. We haven't received any proposed item for discussion from the administration. Maybe we can invite the officials from the Education Bureau to join us now.
咁咧，我哋今日咧就係會討論3。
Today we have 3 items on the agenda. Now we are on item 3, progress on supporting Chinese learning and teaching for non-Chinese speaking students.
好，咁我哋歡迎楊潤雄。
I'd like to welcome Mr. Yang, Under Secretary, and Mr. Wong Hock Ling, Deputy Secretary for Education, Mr. Yip Ling Pik, PAS, and Mr. Zhou Ng, Principal Education Officer. So I would like to ask Mr. Kevin Young to introduce the paper on progress on supporting Chinese learning and teaching for non-Chinese speaking students. I'm sorry for the interruption. You just said, Chairperson, that there was no proposed item for the next meeting. We have a long list of outstanding issues, so why? We haven't received any proposed discussion item for the meeting next month, but this is a very unusual. Well, if they haven't made any proposal, the Deputy Chairman and I will be looking over the outstanding items for discussion to see if some should be discussed. At the time, we were asked to submit the proposed items. We have no proposal to make. This is because of the change of government. I'm sure there will be items for the next meeting in July. And you know the C-elect is going to provide an additional funding to education, and I believe that might be a possible item. Well, I believe for the next meeting we should just be ready to discuss the additional $5 billion in allocation for education. We don't know at the moment whether it's a 5 billion or 4.8 or other amounts. Formally speaking, we don't know yet. All right. Mr. Yang, please walk us through the paper. Yeah. We have implemented a learning curriculum for the non-Chinese speaking students in the learning of Chinese language to facilitate them to learn better. And also we have earmarked $200 million to facilitate schools' implementation of a learning framework. And we have set out the relevant research and data in the paper, and also how the schools have been utilizing the additional allocation of funds. Starting from 2014-15, we have been collecting data and doing some analysis to look into the effectiveness of these special measures to help non-Chinese speaking students. And we have also collected quantitative data, for example, the questionnaire survey, face-to-face interview. And it's been found that the earlier we provide the support, the better for learning Chinese. For those who have been learning Chinese for 3 years in the kindergarten, they have better grades in the Chinese language in their primary years. And we'll continue to collect data. We'll at least do this for 3 years in the tracking survey. On the question of how the schools have been utilizing the additional funds, all schools which have admitted 10 or more non-Chinese speaking students will be given additional $800,000 to $1 million in funding, depending on the number of students of non-Chinese speaking. This is to avoid the concentration of non-Chinese speaking students in a few schools. The schools will mainly utilize the additional funding to provide a diversified learning approach for such as small group learning, then after school support. And some schools have also to utilize 10% of the funds to engage an ethnic minority, the teaching assistants, or for interpretation service. 80% of the schools surveyed expect the Education Bureau to provide a systemized support framework. We have asked look at the relevant the development of textbooks in the second and third space. And it's expected that in the coming years we'll be able to distribute these textbooks to the schools. And there are more NCS students being enrolled to the local mainstream kindergartens so that they can be mainstream into the primary schools. We would track the overall development of these NCS students studying in mainstream schools, and so as to come up with the necessary support framework. Members are invited to note the development of our support to NCS speaking students in the learning of Chinese. And please offer your views. We stand ready to answer questions. It is now question time for members. We have 7 members who would like to ask questions. Claudia, Regina Yip, Yip Kin Yim, Tanya Chan, Chao Kwok Kwan, Helena Wong, Hui Chi Fung, Elizabeth Kwok. So, given that we have 3 items on the agenda, so shall we say we allow each member 4 minutes each? Claudia Mo. Mrs. Carrie Lam had said
clearly that babies would need to start learning from the kindergarten stage that they are Chinese. I'm really surprised by that, because we are a multiracial community. For Pakistani and Nepalese children, you told us that young children should it would be most effective for them to learn Chinese from the kindergarten stage. But you're now saying as if there's only Chinese people in Hong Kong. This is actually racial discrimination. Could the Secretary of Education designate would consider this carefully? I'm not forcing you to give an answer, but this is a political issue. You're giving expatriates the false impression that we are homogenizing Hong Kong, and that there are only ethnic Chinese in Hong Kong and no other nationalities. My question is really that Chinese now, regarding the learning structure for Chinese as a second language, do the schools have any indicators of success? And you said no. You say that it's all school based, and we don't want any data from them. So I'd like to ask you regarding the EM minorities attending the Chinese and English, examination in the TSA assessment. You say that very few, EM minority students take the TSA examination, and then you said, and Carrie Lam said that for another 1 or 2 years, we'll take a look at the data again and see, how we should proceed. So what sort of data would you be looking at? Secondly, I don't know what data you're talking about. It all boils down to common sense. Could you fully comply or follow the recommendations of the EOC? They have a very good suggestion saying that you should not just focus on the teaching framework, but rather there should be a curriculum for Chinese as a second language. I'm sure you will say that standard is very diverse. What the UC is saying is that you should provide for a standard curriculum, and then the teachers will, adapt the curriculum flexibly according to the standards of the EM students. Could you come up with a standard curriculum? Before the Secretary answers the question, I'd like to tell members that we have 3 items on the agenda, and I see more members have put up their hands indicating they would like to ask questions. Okay. So I'm afraid we have to, only allow 3 minutes instead of 4 minutes for each member. So after I've allowed the 2 more members to ask questions, I'm going to draw a line. Could you give me some time? Shall we give Ms. Mo another 30 seconds? I think it's more than that, 40 seconds. Okay, 40 more seconds for Claudia Mo. Secretary. The so-called curriculum and the framework. I think our framework can achieve what Ms. Mo was referring to. That is, at different stages with set targets, we have resources and tools available, and based on the ability of the EM students, will provide appropriate support measures so that they will be able to learn the Chinese language at an earlier stage. So we know that the learning framework can help these NCS students. We're happy to talk to the stakeholders again to see what sort of ideal curriculum they have in mind. When we talk about the curriculum, we cannot tell the difference between that curriculum and our framework. To answer Ms. Mo's second question, do you have a formal curriculum? Never mind the framework. Secretary? I'll talk about the effectiveness of the scheme. The TSA in the past had provided information regarding the performance of NCS students in the Chinese language test. So we have data to reflect on the standard of Chinese of the NCS students. So in the past, for some period of time, one way to assess the effectiveness of the framework is to use the BCA or the TSA results to see whether or not the standard has gone up or not. And when we review the BCA, we certainly consider the impact of the framework. Now, given the time constraint, so when it's 3 minutes, I'm going to cut off members. If there's not enough time for Secretary to answer the question, I hope the Secretary will, condense his answers and give a global response. Mr. Michael Team. When I talk to the relevant organizations, I've heard many teachers telling me that they don't know how to teach the NCS students Chinese, and many of them will use a bilingual approach and use English to explain Chinese terminologies, and the teachers will use simple language to communicate with the NCS students in English. Some academics and myself agree that it's all about language input and output. If NCS students do not listen too much, cannot listen to Cantonese too much, in the end, they only relied on transliteration, that it will affect their learning of the Chinese language. I think we should use Chinese directly as a language of instruction, as in the primary secondary schools. The medium of instruction is English when you teach English Chinese. On the other hand, when you teach the NCS students, you should teach them using Chinese as an MOI. There are many ways to do that. You can, for example, rely on body language, photos, and learning by repetition and so on. Have you noticed this, situation? And do you think this is a problem, according to your review? Some organizations told me that for some half-day kindergarten sessions, they asked the Chinese students to attend the morning session and NCS students attend the afternoon session. This is a problem. When you segregate them into two sessions, So I think actually at the kindergarten stage, it would be best for Chinese and NCS students to learn together, and then you can teach them in Chinese. Separate them into two sessions. Obviously, in the afternoon session, you will explain Chinese vocabularies with English. So the language context will never be present. I hope, Secretary, you will know that it is at that young age, if you provide them with the right language context, it would be most conducive for the NCS students to learn a second language. You don't need to supplement your teaching with a second language. Chairman, in order to help the teachers, learn how to use the learning framework, we have organized many professional language teacher training courses, and we have organized many courses for the teaching of second language, Chinese as second language, and so on, as though how much time the teachers, spend on such training. Well, now, in class, the teachers will, in the light of the actual circumstances, determine the teaching strategy he will adopt. But normally for language education, the teacher should teach language in using the same language as the MOI. But that's not the case now. I've already said that after the two members have asked the question, I'm going to draw a line. We have the following members yet to ask a question: Regina Yip, Chen Kim-yin, Tanya Chen, Fernando Zhong, Helena Wong, Elizabeth Kwok. Anyone else? No? I'm going to draw a line here. Regina Yip. Chairman, I have recently been in touch with many EM groups, and the parents want the children to grow up being able to speak Cantonese as fluently as the ethnic Chinese people. So CSL is only a transitional arrangement. In the end, they want the children to be equally proficient as the local children in Chinese. The situation in different schools vary, but I understand that there are different voluntary bodies, an integrated voluntary education trust organized by some Indians. I think in Yamate and places where there are many EM minorities, they have such facilities in Yamate. In Samchebu and Kundong, they are now running tutorial classes. And after school, the NCS students will will stay together to do the homeworks, and they will recruit some university students to teach them Chinese, and I've seen them using Chinese to do the homework. So it's not a question of money. Could you help them find some premises such as vacant school buildings, so that these NCS students can have tutorial lessons for a few hours after school? Will the Secretary consider providing more support for such initiatives, for such community activities which help NCS students to learn Chinese? We certainly would support them. As to their mode of operation, and if they need any premises to provide such services, the whole administration should be able to provide them with support. When applying for such resources and premises, different departments like the Lands Department, the GPA, would need policy support from other departments. So we can, consider the proposed mode of operation, the content of the activities, which are the students they intend to help, and then we will consider the application. Secretary, I'll be willing to, go with you on your senior officials to find out more about these facilities, because they have been very effective and they have helped many young NCS students. So there's already an assignment for the Secretary before he takes up his new duty. In the paper, you talk a lot about the difficulties encountered, or the different the situation of NCS students learning Chinese. You have learning of Chinese by NCS students born outside of Hong Kong, and you also said that children studying in Chinese and English kindergartens, vary in the effectiveness of learning the Chinese language. I've said that for the NCS students, do you have a profile of these students? You didn't give us too much information as how many of them were born locally, how many of them were born outside of Hong Kong. Do you now have such statistics available? I think the profile of the NCS population is very important. Madam Chair, in the studies and research conducted by the Education Bureau, we do not have a full profile as to where they were born. We don't have such information. But according to the Census and Statistics Department, I believe we can, I think once every 10 years they would conduct a census, and as to whether or not they've collected such information during the census, we can check with the Census and Statistics Department before I can answer Sieb's questions. I believe such data are very important in respect to how we're going to plan and promote the work that we do. I suggest that the Bureau, well, you said that you refer to the census statistics. I'm sure that would be useful. Other than that, the Education Bureau may need to do something else. I suggest that the Bureau should seriously find out about the characteristics of the EM population, especially where they were born, and the process of the growing up. In paragraph 24, you refer to textbooks, and you said that the Bureau hopes that you would be able to provide them with the level 1 textbooks for the schools. So is the textbook, designed to tie in with the pull-out classes? I think the Secretary can answer the question, towards the end. I have a question regarding textbooks. And I also have a question regarding the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese. And for the NCS student, this is another hurdle. Not only do they have to learn Chinese through Cantonese, and if you teach Chinese with Putonghua, you are further aggravating the problem. So using Putonghua as the MOI, as far as the language context is concerned, would you have designated textbooks for that purpose? And so my question is about textbooks, as you mentioned in paragraph 24, and also teaching Chinese using Putonghua as the MOI.
I can ask Mr. Ng to supplement on the question of teaching Chinese through the medium of Putonghua. It's a choice for the schools. As you know, we do not mandate using Putonghua for the teaching of Chinese language. The schools will have regard to the abilities and capacity of their teachers and students. If a school chooses to do this, it has the duty to track the progress of the teaching and learning. At the same time, we have heard from some people and members of this council that this may be most detrimental, or even more detrimental to the learning of Chinese by NCS students. For these schools which admit the NCS students, this will be one of the things that we need to look into. We want to make sure whether the NCS students can also learn effectively if the medium is Putonghua. We are talking about primary 3, primary 4 in the stage 3 of the curriculum by having this learning framework. And those schools which adopt a small group support service will benefit most. And we believe the textbook can help them. We have a course book for teachers, and also some practice questions and question book for students. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Well, I'm also concerned about using Putonghua to teach Chinese language. To the ethnic minority student, NCS student, this is going to be doubly difficult. And the Undersecretary is saying that you will look into this. I hope you'll be doing some objective study, invite some academics to do it. For NCS students, in the P1 enrollment form, some 700 of them will indicate that they cannot communicate in Chinese. As for schools which admit more NCS students, 7 or 8 of them, and the rest will be in other schools which are schools using CMI. So we should be concerned about how these NCS students learn Chinese. But this is going to be a struggle for them for a long, long time. If they go to these 8 schools, they would have a poorer prospect in acquiring the necessary competency of in Chinese language. And also the school guide does not really tell these people what kind of support measures will be provided. For example, how many NCS students are admitted, and whether the circulars and notices will be translated into, say, English And do they have teaching assistants to help NCS students? Do you have other enhanced support measures? Well, things are so the lack of transparency. Maybe in the school guide, you should ask schools to provide the necessary information so that the parents and students can make the right choice. You have 30 seconds. Actually, all schools should take care of all students, in particular NCS students, and they should provide information on whether they have admitted NCS. If they don't have a separate teaching class for these NCS students, they will need to consider whether the school can take care of these students if they don't have pull-out learning, small or split class. Next we have Mr. Jiang Guoguan. In the Bureau's paper, it's been mentioned that 10 to 20% of these schools are engaged ethnic minority teaching assistants. Others would ask the parents, ethnic minority parents, to help them or to make use of the HAD's interpretation service. How effective are these support measures? What would be done to enhance the communication between the school and the NCS students' parents? If they have non-Chinese speaking teaching assistants, then it would be helpful in communicating with the parents. But the actual situation in the school may be much more complicated because we are talking about different races, and it's not easy to have a teaching assistant for each racial background, for each NCS student. And it may differ from year to year. In one year, they may be using more resources to hire teaching assistants, and in another, they may hire the interpretation service. For example, if they admit NCS from a number of different racial backgrounds, they may use the HAD's service, commonly referred to as cheese. Now, if they have more NCS students coming from a particular racial background, that it may be better to hire a teaching assistant with the same background. That would be better for communication, but we have to let the school make the decision. And it's generally speaking, yes, with a teaching assistant from the same background, that would certainly be helpful. Dr. Helena Wong, I have a question about examination for NCS senior secondary students. You know, they are learning Chinese language as a second language, and that this is part of the applied learning. But in the DSE, do they take a different paper compared with Chinese-speaking students? And also, for the admission to universities, would NCS students be a disadvantage in any way? The curriculum for if the NCS student is on the DSE curriculum, they can choose to take the traditional Chinese examination, the same.
Apply practical Chinese.
If not, they can use they can take the applied practical Chinese subject, and there are 2 grades: a pass with distinction, and that will be equivalent to the level 2 or level 3, grade 2 or grade 3 of the DSE, which is acceptable to most tertiary institutions. And also, apart from DSE, they can also take some internationally recognized examinations, such as GCSE, AS level, and the like. I don't know. I'm not so sure, not so clear about that. If they take the special subject that in respect of applied learning, even if they pass, they will not satisfy the requirements of universities in respect of Chinese language. If it's the applied learning Chinese curriculum, if they pass, it's equal to level 2 of DSE examination. If they pass with distinction, it's equivalent to level 3.
大學係承認呢一科嘅科目。
Yes, the grades are recognized, accepted, and accepted by universities.
語嘅學生咧，如果佢喺香港出世嘅話咧，其實佢有好好嘅。
Well, if the NCS student is born in Hong Kong, then they have a good chance to acquire a good competency in Chinese as long as they get admitted to a Chinese kindergarten using Chinese. But the question is that they don't get admitted to these kindergartens with Chinese as a teaching medium, because many kindergartens don't tell parents whether they will in the communication with parents or they would use Chinese or English. And also, some parents have difficulties in attending the interview. It's a question of chicken and egg. If an SES student is admitted, he or she can adjust very quickly, but they can't pass the interview if it's in Chinese. I know you have guidelines that an interpreter should be provided and so on and so forth, but that's not what the real situation is like. So how many kindergartens using Chinese as a medium have turned away NCS applicants? If so, then they can't even pass the first hurdle. So can you tell us, if you know the numbers, on the question of transparency, for the guide to kindergarten, which is published every October, we provide basic information on of kindergartens to enable parents to make better choices in choosing kindergartens. As regards interviews, we have heard that some kindergarten doesn't seem to welcome NCS applicants, so that in the interview these NCS children are not given any way to display their ability. We all agree that a kindergarten should be fair to all. If there are obvious examples of such a practice, and we are willing to follow up the matter with individual kindergartens. We cannot just look at whether they have admitted any NCS student as a cause for asking questions. We cannot say that you haven't admitted any NCS students, and there must be a problem.
Okay.
You require the schools to keep record on the number of NCS students applying for admission. Yes, the time is up. Elizabeth Kwok. Ms. Kwok is not here. Now it's Mr. Leung Kok Hong's turn. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Hui Chi-fung's question. I think you were right in saying this. If the kindergarten had not, admitted any NCS students or only a very small number, now the crucial point here is that I think what the policy really is that you use carrot and sticks. If you compare the kindergartens to accept NCS students, that's the carrot, or you give them more subsidies if they are willing to admit NCS students, and you give them more resources. 2 months ago, when we approved funding for kindergartens, we suggested that you should allow the kindergartens more funds to buy stationery and so on because of the change in the system. Now, when children learn a language earlier they start, the better it would be. After, if you wait until they have become older, it would not be so effective. So, do you have any policy or to do this? And secondly, Mr. Young, the secretary designate, you said there are no real or genuine cases. I will now appeal to people to look for these actual cases. Don't be scared, because I've heard of many such cases. Now we have a mismatch here. The Member Republic say that this is very common occurrence, and the Secretary said you have not come across any such cases. Many members of the public are now, watching us live. So if they have heard of such cases, they should either let me know or write to LegCo, write to the chairman, Madam Chair, or the chairman and vice chairman of the education panel. Why don't I give you some time as to whether or not you have any policy to do that? Well, we do have a policy. Mr. Leung said that under the new policy, that is under the quality education, free and quality education, we said that if we can admit 8 or more NCS students, we will provide them additional resources equivalent to the salary of 1 kindergarten teacher, so that the kindergarten can do a better job in terms of catering to the NCS students. It is also our policy to encourage kindergartens to adopt a fair and open policy to admit students. It's time for members to end members' questions. I'd like to ask the Secretary now whether you would like to make a global response. Ms. Kwok is now back to the chamber. I won't be able to give you 3 minutes. I'll give you 2. And then I'll ask the Secretary to see whether or not there's anything else you would like to supplement. Thank you. Sorry, there are many meetings being held concurrently. So I like to, well, we've met many, every minority representatives who came to petition us today. They pointed out that in fact, the government is not really helping the children to integrate into the school. The government only provide funding for the schools without providing them with the education materials. In other words, what you are doing now is not able to help the children to learn Chinese effectively in school. And they also think that there's a lack of transparency in terms of your funding, and they don't know how the funds are used. And it's not the first time that I hear of such, comments. I'm sorry, I was at a different meeting earlier. I'd like to ask you, what plans do you have going forward to help these EM students so that they can really learn Chinese effectively from an early stage? Secretary? The Education Bureau and the government, like the public at large, would like to help the EM members to be able to realize the potential, and to do that they must be able to learn Chinese effectively. In 2014-2015, we constructed a learning framework for learning Chinese as a second language, and if there's anything we can further improve on that framework, we will be willing to do that. It takes time to learn Chinese. Some people may think that we're not seeing any results yet, but initially, through some questionnaire surveys and discussions with stakeholders, we are seeing some results. But however, we still need more time before we can have more details. We've already provided the funding, the resources. In terms of transparency, in fact, we hope the schools will continue to enhance the transparency of the operation, and this is something we hope we will be able to do. As for how the resources are used, we may not need details as such how much is spent on individual students, but we would take a look at the whole school, and when the school helps the different the EM students, given the different EM students different needs, and the service they receive will be different. So I therefore like to appeal to the parents of the NCS students not to compare themselves with each other. We will monitor the situation because that amount of funding must be spent on the NCS students and not for any other purpose. Okay, with that we will wrap up our discussion on this item, and we will now move on to Item 4, which is the pilot project on special education needs coordinators.
咁我想提醒一下咧，就係各位議員啦。
I'd like to remember that if any member would like to move a motion, I hope you would do so before I draw the line. Otherwise, I can only allow time for member to speak, and we won't have time to deal with those motions. So if you intend to move any motions, please do so. Please submit them before I have drawn the line. When we are about a quarter of the time into this item, I will draw the line. I'd like to welcome Mr. Young, Undersecretary, Mrs. Wong, Deputy Secretary, and Mr. Lai Kwang Tong, PAS. Mr. Young, are you going to walk us through the paper? Thank you. As stated in the paper, we want to brief members on the latest update on the pilot project on special education needs coordinators. In Appendix 1, we have already provided report. Starting from 2015-2016, we launched a pilot scheme on special education needs coordinators. A total of 142 students, 65 secondary schools, and in 2016-2017, about 10,200 SEN students benefited from the scheme. Schools taking part in the pilot scheme will get equivalent of a midterm salary of a AM or graduate master, so that the school can appoint an appropriate teacher to take up the role of the coordinator. to coordinate matters relating to SEN and to help the school, build up an inclusive culture and a whole school approach. We also provide training for these coordinators and conduct assessment on the scheme. We have 3 courses and we have a consultant and the Bureau have organized various activities to help the schools to set up their own networks, and the school principals and the coordinators a positive response to this training. The consultant conducted some quantitative and qualitative data regarding the scheme and whether it's been helpful in helping SEN students and also promoting the whole school approach so that the coordinators can play the role more effectively and to provide better service for the SEN students. The pilot has been running for 2 years to enable the pilot, the coordinators to effectively play the role. We will continue to provide training and support for these coordinators and monitor the progress of the pilot scheme. Regarding the report of the committee, it's already appended in Appendix 1. After many years of experiment, we've already achieved considerable progress in inclusive education. In building the culture and government policies, we have I think inclusive education and whole school, participation are already, taking root in schools. So we'll continue to promote inclusive education, and where necessary, and if there's a need, we'll make improvements, including, SEN, taking care of students at SEN, and right. We have Mrs. Regina Yip, Yip Kin Yun, and Fernando Zhang and Chen Chi-chun. So we have 4 members. Anyone else for the first round? If not, I'm going to allow 4 minutes to each member. So I'm going to draw a line here. Mrs. Yip, Madam Chair. Many schools have been, bothered by SEN, and there's a lack of professionals to help them. It's good that you have the Senko scheme, but I have received complaints from teachers. One educator had a daughter who has suffered from dyslexia. But she was deployed to do something else. I mean, you've allowed the school to create a post. Why don't you answer some of the questions first? I believe Mrs. Yip's question was whether we are aware that after we provided funding to the school has used it to hire a teacher to do something else. For schools participating in the school, we have 124 at the moment for those schools which have received our funding to hire such teachers. And we do monitor the situation for these schools. The teacher they hire may not be the one who will become the coordinator, but after they find the new teacher and expanded the team, the school may find one suitable teacher among its staff to take up the role of the coordinator. 124 schools have joined the pilot scheme, and we are closely monitoring the 124, coordinators, what they are doing, the progress they've achieved at school, and so on. So far, we do not see that there is such a problem. I think for any pilot projects, I hope the Secretary will conduct audits after the scheme has been running for some time to find out what is really happening, in the schools. Other than requiring the schools to hire additional manpower, the Bureau could be more flexible. For example, I have received complaints about children suffering from dyslexia, but they have not been identified until a very late stage. You may only identify them with dyslexia when they are about to take the DSA examination. So I think you need to identify them in an earlier stage. And now you have softwares, the Apple software, speech to text, right? That software to help them. But it's too late. You're not able to help them. It's only a minor issue. It doesn't cost a lot of money so long as you have a better program to do it. And I think you should, change with the times. Do you only just have the single Apple software?
困難嘅嘢。
Well, it shouldn't be too difficult, but you can ask the Innovation and Technology Bureau to help you with some newer software for earlier identification and earlier extension of support and help. Under Secretary, the suggestion is noted for the speech-to-text software to be used in DSE. This is the first year that we would try it out. So in this select choice of software, there's still a lot of room to make further improvements. We'll talk to the Hong Kong EAA to see how we can do a better job. And also, please look into whether many cases are identified only at a very late stage. Mr. Yip Kyun-yun, Madam Chair, I know the new term government would take on board suggestions from the education sector, and they would regularize this Senko post. And in 3 years, it will be extended to all such schools. And it's only a very short time before we have the start of the new school year in September. And if we have to wait until the funding approval is given, the time will be even shorter. You are the next Secretary for Education. I don't know whether you can tell us how you can make suitable arrangements to make sure that the implementation is smooth, and that the schools to be identified in the first, the 1/3 of the schools to be covered in the first stage will be informed. Any special measures for special schools? For new measures to be implemented, I think we have to leave it to a later stage for discussion, for detailed discussion. But for this pilot scheme, one factor is important. We are aware of the need to train these coordinator, and also there should be a network for these coordinators, for liaison, for mutual support and learning. And school principals and other stakeholders should also participate so that the Senko can be successful. So it's not a question of having every person in his or her post. Last time we gave them some time to get prepared, but it doesn't mean that we must get everything ready at the beginning of the school year. There may be changes in the teachers' establishment and other factors. So for the next term government, if this is to be implemented, we'll look at the number of schools to be covered, and then we'll decide what should be done. Understand? But this is a new arrangement. It's going to be an established post, unlike the pilot scheme. I hope the Secretary can expeditiously implement the new scheme. On training, turning to training, the Senko will receive some induction training and advanced training 3 times for 2 days. It's a very flimsy structure for the training of a teacher in the special education field. If this is a coordinator And if only teaching them how to do administrative work in coordination, maybe you can just make. But special education is a very complicated matter. In the past, some teachers were given full pay leave for training for longer term training, so up to 3 years in special education. So the coordinator must have the requisite knowledge before he can act as a effective coordinator. Dr. Fernando Zhang, this SENCO post is the result of the report or the government's positive response to the report of the subcommittee on integrated education of this council. Although the recommendations were not accepted at first, then a pilot scheme was launched 2 years ago under the CCF, and we have had some positive experience for the 2 years. I've heard something like what Mrs. Regina Yip has talked about, and that is the SENCO will have to shoulder half the teaching workload of a teacher. So we need to monitor whether the resources provided, the funding provided, will be used in work areas such as coordinating with parents and coordination. In some schools, maybe this post is used to reduce the general average workload, teaching workload of teachers. The Undersecretary is going to be our new secretary. Perhaps you should consider whether in the future you can regularize this post. Should you not reduce the teaching workload of this SENCO teacher? This coordinator must be given certain power and to do the coordinator's job. But the CCF is providing funding for just for the pay of just normal teacher. Although an additional SENCO post can share some of the workload of teachers. But after 2 years of the pilot, I would like to know whether there will be improvements in the future. Madam Chair. Sorry, suddenly I draw a blank. We can review the question of teaching workload. One of the reasons that we did it as a pilot, and because we want to pack the range of teaching workload at 30% to 50%. Yeah, that should be done. That should be done. Says Dr. Fernando Zhang. Although the coordinator, the SENCO is a coordinator, he or she must also be doing things in classrooms so that it's easier for the SENCO to communicate with teachers. We can adjust the workload percentage. That can be done.
師究竟係咪要係喺我哋而家俾咧？我哋係俾一個普通嘅教師。
And we give them funding to hire a normal teacher. And you may think that SENCO should be at a higher rank. In the longer term, that can be considered because when this is a pilot scheme, of course, we do it according to the basic teaching post structure. But we'll look at how the functions and of this SENCO post. Well, it will be completed in a year's time, so perhaps you should get ready to do it. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, there are time-limited primary schools, and some primary schools suddenly admit hundreds of P1. For example, one in Ping Shek, they have admitted 320 P1, which means that they have to offer 10 classes. When P1 students are admitted, they may not show anything that warrants special SCN treatment. With the teacher-to-student ratio being so tight, teachers may not be able to identify the SENS student. What would be done to help these so-called time-limited primary schools and their teachers to identify SENS students? I do understand what the member is asking. Under the P1 allocation system this year, we have some so-called revived primary schools and time-limited primary schools in operation, because we know that in coming years suddenly there may be a peak, a sudden rise in student population. We provide the resources in accordance with the normal teacher-to-student ratio of other schools. So with more classes, they are going to hire more teachers. So on average, the support to students will not be less than that in other so-called normal primary schools. On the question of identification of SEN students, would you do more to help them? Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, for the identification of SEN students is done in stages. At P1, through observation, we would also do some questionnaire surveys to initially do some observation. And then at P2, we may be able to tell who have more serious conditions, and then there will be a formal assessment. This can be handled under the normal teacher-to-student ratio in normal circumstances. But if the school faces special education, they can tell my bureau, and we can certainly help them to do a better job. Any follow-up question? No, thank you. Two more members would like to speak, Mr. Abraham Shag and then Mr. Hui Chi-fong. Who else would like to speak or would like to have a second round? If not, I'll draw a line here. We don't have a second round. Mr. Abraham Shag, 4 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. This project should be supported. I hope they will spend more time to do it, to improve it. Special education is not ordinary teaching. SEN students are unfortunate in that they need to attend special schools. You need to provide them more resources. The administrator is a standalone coordinator, and other teachers must also chip in. If this coordinator is working in a good school, he would get more support. But if the teacher-to-student ratio is so big, it would be difficult to identify the students as SEN students unless the STEM students are really in the serious conditions. Otherwise, they would not be identified. that would have a negative impact on their learning for the entire schooling the period. Madam Chair, I'm the chair of the ESF board. We have a special school, Sarah Road. I know the secretary, the secretary for the next government has visited the school. I hope they would get the students there will get some training, and then they will be integrated into other mainstream schools, and there will be teachers to take care of them at first before they can adapt and they can have the choice to receive education in a normal sense. In other countries, they would identify students with dyslexia and they would be given more time in examinations.
多50億一年，你擺落。
The FS has allocated $18 billion for education, and the CELEC promised another $5 billion. I hope more can be provided to special schools, because these schools are not willing to utilize foreign resources for SEN students. I hope at the central level, at the bureau level, you can also offer help to these administrators
to help them do a good job. Secondly, well, I was not present during the early part of this meeting. I was in the next room. For the NCS students, we've been working on this for many years. You put in a lot of resources, you're still not getting any results. It's still very difficult for NCS students to learn Chinese. You don't understand the difficulties they face. You just provide them with learning materials. You don't really teach them properly. So that's a real problem. I hope that after you become the secretary, please take some time to help these students. If you go to Yuen Long or Tin Shui Wai, there are so many South Asian youths who failed in the studies and have become a social problem. It's not really the fault, it's the fault of our society, because not being able to train them or educate them, properly. Well, we still have time. Secretary, perhaps you can respond to that. Madam Chair, Mr. Sheikh, I understand. It's very concerned about the NCS students and SEN students. The points that he had raised really deserve to be followed up by us. In the platform of the CE, manifesto of the CE designate, she has promised that for the next term of the administration will step up its efforts in these areas. I believe the administration of the next term will certainly be willing to consider how we can help these students with special needs, and what else do we need to improve for inclusive education. We also help the NCS students to better learn Chinese so that they will be able to integrate into our society. I believe this is the things that the next administration will work on. The SEN students, for the SEN students, we should also, take care of the needs of the parents. So I think giving them the right support and homeschool cooperation are very important. I understand that a lot of work is being done within the school. But in terms of helping the parents, what has the Bureau done? In paragraph 11, you say that there is better communication between teachers and parents. And so what exactly are the support you provide for the parents? And have you assessed whether or not such support is enough? Thank you. At the Education Bureau, we would conduct parent education through the schools, and we will have another item on the agenda on parent education. For SEN students and the parents of such students, very often we would organize talks and seminars or provide information to enable these parents to learn about the meaning of special education needs and how they should face it. So if they have children who need special care, of the children would require care around the clock. At the moment, the SWD, Social Work Department, will provide them with more direct support. As to how the parent can help the student to learn or to cope with the difficulties he or she encounters in learning, I think we can help through homeschool collaboration and providing them with relevant information. You say the school and the welfare social work department can provide support for the parents, but in this pilot scheme for SENCO, I think you can leverage more on the collaboration between school and the home, because very often parents have misunderstanding about the schools. They think that they have the impression the school is not treating the SEN students very well. So I hope that you can play a more effective role in enhancing communication between schools and families. I fully agree with the member. The coordinator, I think we have not particularly highlighted this point, but school-home collaboration is very important in helping to take care of the SEN students. The SEN coordinator will be focusing on, stepping up his effort in this area. We'll certainly take on board the member's suggestion and do better. I hope going forward, when you conduct further evaluation, you will make such observation and provide us with more information regarding the role of SENCO. Anyone else would like to speak? If not, I was going to ask the Secretary this question. You said that we have more than 10,000 SEN students. For the 1,000 odd SEN students, amongst them, how do you have you categorized them into different groups? The 10,000 odd SEN students are the SEN students who will benefit from the SENCO scheme and not the total population of SEN students. For the whole territory, we have more 4,000 odd students with special education needs. But do you break them down into different categories? Yes, we've divided them into different SEN student needs. Some may be mentally impaired and so on. So we do have breakdown. Some would be visually impaired, some may have hearing impairment. If the chair wishes, we can provide you with such detailed breakdowns after the meeting. Yes, I think the clerk can circulate that to members once she has received it. Okay, with that, we can wrap up our discussion on this item. I'd like to thank the officials for attending meeting on this item. Next, we will move on to the last item for today, and this is measures to promote parent education. Earlier, we had circulated a notice to members. We would welcome members to invite, organizations promoting parent education to attend our meeting. So we have received 2 organizations recommended by members. The first one is the Homeschool Collaboration organization. We welcome the Secretary and the officials for attending this item on the agenda.
好，咁歡迎團體代表出席啊。咁咧，我哋首先咧會齊請吳克儉局長，咁咧就係介紹今日嘅文件嘅。咁然後局長介紹完。
To walk us through the paper, we welcome the Secretary to first walk through the paper. After that, we will invite the deputation to speak. Mr. Secretary, thank you. Parents play a very important role in the development and learning of the children. And that's why the administration attaches a lot of importance to parent education. Through different policy bureaus and departments collaboration, we promote parent education. Different departments, in the light of the respective portfolio, would promote parent education. The scope of parent education is extensive. The work of the Education Bureau is to provide quality school education. Parent is the major stakeholder, and when our bureau's strategy is school-based, through promoting school-home cooperation, we enable the school and the parents to build up a partnership so that together they can promote the learning and the healthy development of the children. In promoting school-home collaboration, the Committee on School-Home Collaboration was set up in 1993. It had actively been promoting the establishment of PTAs and to improve liaison and communication between home and the schools. All subvented primary and secondary schools and about 1/3 of kindergartens already set up PTAs. In Hong Kong, we have a total of 1,400 schools which already set up PTAs, including kindergartens. Other than that, in all 18 districts, parent, teacher, federation, and parent education, alliance have been set up to coordinate the efforts of PTAs in the district. The Education Bureau for the parents, the schools, and the PTA Federation in all 18 districts would provide them with subsidies to promote different types of parent education activities. Take this academic year, the Education Bureau sponsored about 3,400 projects, total amount of funding more than $30 million. The Committee on Homeschool Collaboration will organize workshops and seminars and talks, and also jointly organize, school, activities on school-home collaboration. It has also set up its own website to provide information for parents to help them better understand the development and the needs of the children and to acquire the latest information about the schools. In respect of the school curriculum, IT education, online bullying, lifetime learning, vocational training, and special education, we would, through different channels such as talks, workshops, our website, pamphlets, information kits, and so on, we'll provide parents with different types of support so that they can have the necessary information and acquire the skills. The Bureau also from time to time would consult PTAs to collect the views regarding various initiatives. We also have parent representatives sitting on relevant committees. To further promote parent education and to enhance collaboration between the school and family, we will be promoting a mobile app for parent education to make it more convenient for parents to access the information they need. We will commission a contractor to conduct a study on communication between schools and homes and continue to organize lifetime learning, children health, and so on. And also free quality education started in 2017-2018. The Education Bureau will actively promote more, encourage more kindergartens to set up PTAs so that we can, start, homeschool collaboration earlier. We will continue to step up parent education and continue to liaise with the different stakeholders so that we can better promote parent education and collaboration between school and families. Thank you.
代表發言嘅，咁我首先係請
invite the deputations to speak. First of all, Chairman of the Committee on Homeschool Cooperation, Mr. Hon SHIU Ka-chun. We believe that parent education should be a sustained effort, and there should be different stages, and parents should learn different things when their children are at different ages, and to help their children to foster positive life values, and parents should understand the learning process and reasonably adjust their expectations. As explained by the Secretary, the Education Bureau is going to adopt a multi-pronged approach to cater for the different needs of parents and students. I expect that more parents will benefit from this different parent education in different forms, such as the website, the mobile app. I believe they will be popular. I would like to say something about the district parents network. In the report on quality kindergarten education, that there should be district parents resource center to provide a variety of services to parents. We'd like the Education Bureau to carry out the necessary feasibility study and get preparations. We believe the resource center should regard empowerment as the first priority, that is to empower both parents and students. To do this, we can look at it from three levels in the launching of the resource centers. There should be different programs for parents at different stages, and there should be a library, and they should also support the schools in the district in parent education, and there should be outreach services to reach out to schools and even commercial entities. Many parents are under stress because of study problems of their children. In a questionnaire survey by the Pediatric Society, saying that 90% of parents think that the government is not providing adequate support, and many parents suffer from the stress. A lot of the problems stem from the unreasonable expectations or lack of understanding of their children. There are the successful experience in other jurisdictions that the district resource centers can help timely counseling and support to parents. And secondly, the centers should provide a platform for parents to exchange views. The resource center should be able to provide a platform for parents from different districts to learn from each other and to exchange views and to enhance their capacity. In recent years, some parents have become so-called helicopter parents, or they attach too much importance to the competitive advantage of children. Parent education should be start at a young age of the children. For example, the resource center should have, first of all, extend support to the parents with kindergarten pupils, and then extend to other age groups. Next, we have Dr. Liu Ka-wei. I've read the government's paper. Every year, the government spends tens of millions of dollars in parent support. But according to a survey, 2022, many respondents think that the government is not doing sufficient in promoting parent education. Well, this is a big topic. Apart from education, we should also be looking at welfare, manpower, and other complicated issues. We know that every child is unique. Therefore, every family and every parent can be said to be unique. Can we have a top-down approach in organizing seminars and talks, and we can meet the needs of different social strata? If you offer a talk to parents, only parents who are not working can attend. And if for a parent from a grassroots background who work 12 hours a day, how can they attend the talks? And they may not be able to understand the abstract things mentioned by the speaker. So we are talking about a great variety. For example, for the Rock Fund, we aim at bringing creative arts to the schools as a channel for children to express their emotion, because we know that there are many cases of student suicide, and we don't want that. So for social workers and professionals, they are not able to stir up the keen interest as the discussion to following the activity, and they would like to share ideas. Parents would like to share ideas and experience with each other. So parents need to help. And I don't think that district work adopting a top-down approach is appropriate. We are a small NGO, but we understand the different needs of different social groups. There are many NGOs like us. We understand the needs of these parents. The government wants to have an interdepartmental coordinating group, but what about other problems, such as parents not being able to attend talks if they have to work? So it's better to provide funding to NGOs. And then they can apply for the funding support they need, so that a variety of support and help can be offered to parents instead of having just one dedicated organization doing this. So they need different things, so there should be different organizations to provide a vast variety of service to parents from different social strata. Thank you, Dr. Yip. Next, the floor is open to members. Members, you may wish to speak about or put questions to the Bureau about promoting parent education, or you may want to talk with the deputation. 5 members have indicated wish to speak. Jiang Kok-kwan, Claudia Mo, Michael Tin, Wilson Oh, and I myself. 3 minutes for each member. Mr. Jiang Kok-kwan. Since the Committee on Homeschool Cooperation was established in 1993, it has been encouraging schools to set up PTAs. And according to this paper, many primary and secondary schools have set up PTAs, and nearly 1/3 of kindergartens have done the same. So I have this question for the Bureau, for the Secretary. So 2/3 of KGs have not done this, have not set up PTAs. Have you looked into the reasons for that? And has the Bureau got any special measures to help these kindergartens? Secretary, thank you for your question, Mr. Zhang. What is important that in 2017, 2018, we are going to implement quality kindergarten education. One of the objectives is to ask the KGs to enhance parent education, and under that, one of the measures will be to set up PTAs. And so many KGs are starting to set up PTAs in recent years. And I am confident that when the new policy is fully implemented, most KGs would have set up their PTAs. And also at the district level, we'd like to enhance exchanges and sharing of views and ideas. Well, when they are new, they may not know what to do it. They may wish to learn from other districts and other PTAs. And that's why we want to set up district-based federation of PTAs. And I've also talked about the training to be provided. And it's a very valid point has been made by one of the deputations that the parents do not have a lot of time. For example, from past experience, from Monday to Friday, the activities are mostly attended by mothers, and on weekends by fathers. So with bear in mind all these factors in promoting parent education. Next, Ms. Claudia Mould.
我自己個人咧就非常堅持什麼家長教育咧。
For me, I would insist that parent education has got nothing to do with government. There's no need for the government to take the lead. It's just like press freedom. The media should take care of this themselves. And I'm a mother, and I raise my children on my own. I share views with other parents, especially young parents and young mothers. And there's no need to be too stressful for the entire 18 years. And you even talk about lifetime planning. It's even more scary. Last week, I attended an activity organized by hundreds of by young people. Hundreds of young people were there, and I've learned from some young people who are more mature, saying that his mother planned his education, and she wanted him to be a lawyer, and after going through all the necessary training, he told the mother that I have done what you have asked me to, and I'm not going to be a lawyer. Well, you should be a master of your own, and there's no need to do a lot of planning. And when I said this, the young people then gave me a big round of applause. So the more I hear about this lifelong planning, and this is also called a sustainable and territory-wide and phase approach. It makes me even more bored. And then when I attended a function, no one spoke English. And also the parents who don't speak English, EM, ethnic minorities. And if you, if a school admits NCS student, you should at least have ethnic minority teaching assistants or translators and interpreters. You have spent $200 million in helping NCS students in learning Chinese. You should even give their parents a chance to know what their children are learning. And there are also kindergartens using Putonghua as a medium of instruction. That's even more scary. These young kids don't even know how to learn through the Cantonese. And you want to use Putonghua. I received this motion from Michael Tin.
I will deal with this motion at 6:25. So I'm going to draw a line here, and I won't be accepting any more motions. Okay? No more. So this is the only motion that we'll deal with. Next, Mr. Michael Tin. Thank you, Madam Chair, for agreeing to deal with my motion. Secretary, I went to the district a few days ago. Father in his 30s was with his son. He came up to me and said, Mr. Tin, I saw your banner suggesting primary school children shouldn't have any homeworks to do. I don't want my son to work so hard. I want to play ball with him and want him to read whatever he likes to read. I heard that you learn your Chinese reading, these martial art, novels, and he can daydream if he likes. But the school is giving him lots of homeworks. It's not like what the Education Bureau is saying. There's still a lot of homework. If he cannot finish all the homework, he will get demerit points. But I can't help him do his homework for him. And he said my wife would ask him to learn to play the piano and gymnastics and so on, and she and said that he starting at a young age he will need to build up a good CV. So everybody is doing that. So Michael Tin said that we should give young children a happy childhood. We should stimulate their curiosity and interest in learning and so on. But the government, well, what is the outcome of negotiation with the government? Reading your Facebook, you said you talked to the Secretary Designate about your vision, and that free education should be divided in 3 stages. The first 6 years from K1 to primary 3, it would be best that we would stimulate their curiosity and interest to learn. Don't focus so much on languages and maths. Leave it to the second learning stage for that. And the other academic subjects, we leave it until the last phase. In your Facebook, I understand that the Secretary Designate said that he's willing to consider that. Now, Secretary, this is difficult, which is even more difficult to answer than the one I had to answer during the election platform. The government talks about parent education. You want to teach parents how to be a parent. Can you try answering this question from that parent? Now, adopting my proposal, do you think for the first 6 years, should we be stimulating the curiosity of the students and not focus so much on examinations and homeworks? Secretary, you don't have very much time to respond. Thank you. 2 points. First of all, parent education doesn't mean that we provide them information and facilitate exchange. And we need more communication to parents through seminars and talks and so on to help them really understand what is the meaning of homework, when it's helpful, when it is not helpful. Thirdly, very often we discover that parents may have different expectations of the children, and how they communicate with the children about that is something else we need to think about. Parent is one of the stakeholders for the education of children. I always stressed that the government should provide more resources to promote better relationship between the home and the school. This is the last time the secretary is attending our meeting. I'd like to ask, in 2007 you set up the Family Council. You provided a very good cross-sectoral and cross-departmental platform for parents to interact. From 2007 to 2017, has the Family Council conducted any review about its work, about including its composition in terms of reference and direction? And if so, what is the result of that review? And if not, what is the reason why you have not conducted such a review? Very often, the Family Council organized many activities with PTAs, and they talk about they very often talk about the amount of subsidy. For newly set up PTA is $5,000. For established PTA, $5,267. They tell me each and every time that this amount is not enough to help them organize PTA meetings and other activities. In respect of these two amounts of subsidies, will the Bureau consider adjusting this amount so that the PTA can really have more resources to organize the activities? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Orr. The Family Council, after it has been set up, is supported by the Home Affairs Bureau. So any suggestions and the different support they provide, so it's not really confined to education. And when we implement any policies, we need to consider whether or not it's family friendly. And this is only one example. We discovered in different areas. We've done a lot of different work in respect of catering to the needs of parents. The part concerning education I've already mentioned earlier. I'll be happy to provide you with further details after the meeting. And your second question was resources for Committee for Family Education. Well, we provide the grants to all primary and secondary schools and some kindergartens. Different schools will do it. At the federation level, we provide them with funding every year. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Thirdly, through the Quality Education Fund, we organize large-scale events, and they can apply to use the funds for those purposes. If need be, we were prepared to consider how we can support such meaningful activities. I hope you will relay to the Secretary-designate that such resources are really important, and you will consider providing additional resources so that these activities can be run more smoothly. Secretary, it's now my turn. My question is that many parents are able to communicate very well with their children, and they don't really need the government or any party to help them. But the problem is that we've just heard from Dr. Tom and Mr. Lim that there are some parents who have to work very hard to make a living, and they don't even have time to take part in the activities of the PTAs. So how can you help these parents? It is exactly these parents. Very often we hear these parents saying they don't know how to communicate with the children, especially young adolescents. They really face lots of difficulties. How are we going to help these parents? Can we really help them through the PTAs? Or should the government do something at the community level and organize seminars, for example? Or could there be designated, professionals like social workers they can go to for help? Thank you. I can use one or two examples to answer your question. For parents who work full-time, who don't have the time but who care a lot about the children, I understand the Family Council had discussed this as well. For many business organizations, they provide employee assistance programs. About 1/3 of which are very popular, is to ask the staff to come together to exchange experience on how to communicate with the children and to teach them about the needs of young children. That such training includes, for example, how to manage, the emotions of parents and so on. So these are really helpful and proven to be popular to parents. Thirdly, different welfare organizations and voluntary organizations have also have experts who've done a lot of work. We also to provide service. So it's very diversified. The government cannot, come up with a curriculum for parent education because the situation in respect of different schools and parents are different. Thank you. So we're finished with all the questions, and we will now have to deal with a motion moved by Mr. Michael Teen. Mr. Teen, would you walk this? Chairman, this committee believes that to effectively promote parent education, the administration should come up with the right policy initiative to improve on the inadequacies of the current education system, including the following: issue warnings and also step up the monitoring to ensure that primary school children should finish homeworks at school, so that the quality, parenting time at home will not be affected. Secondly, you should take random samples to conduct the TSA and BCA in order to eliminate the incentive for drills. And thirdly, step up to enhance support for vocational education and to expand the coverage of the scheme to the parents have more choices in choosing the right path for development for the children. The clerk has reminded me that we do not really have a quorum. So I exercise my discretion and ring the division bell and see whether we have members coming back to help us form a quorum.
咁咧就我哋呢個會議會延遲係啦15分鐘啦。呢個會議喺15分鐘之內。
I need to extend the meeting by 15 minutes until we have dealt with this one.
好啊，嚇，咁咧就
Members, we have a motion moved by Mr. Michael Tin. Shall I invite Mr. Tin to read it out again? Well, I would like to have a guidance issue to ensure that primary schools will let their students to complete their homework during the classroom time, so as not to affect the interaction between parents and students, and also to introduce a new mode of TSA or BCA, and also to expand vocational training. There are students who are not academically inclined, and so we would like to help them to chart an alternative development path, and so that the parents will not be so concerned about having their children winning at the starting point of the education process. We are still short of 2 members.
副主席啊，係嘛？啊，主要我哋議員都。
Have you counted the deputy chairman?
好，咁咧就我哋今日咧就唔夠人數表決啦。
We don't have sufficient number of members. I'm sorry, so we cannot vote on the motion. Not even with Mr. Houghton Chow coming to join us. AOB. If there's nothing under AOB, then meeting's adjourned. And we are grateful to the deputations, Dr. Liu and Dr. Tong, for their attendance. And I'd like to thank the Mr. Ng, the Secretary, and other officials for their attendance. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.